This episode includes discussions of suicide and self-harm, which may be distressing to some listeners. Please listen with care. If you or someone you know is struggling, support is available on Lifeline on 131114 for free and confidential support.
I truly believed that I was the worst mother in the world. Like, Heba, you can have everything in the world. Like, we can give you all the drugs. We can keep you in here like for the rest of your life. But if you don't help yourself, that nothing's going to happen. Everyone is living such an individualized life, and it's just the way, it's the context of our living. And it's such a hard thing because motherhood, it doesn't thrive in that kind of. If you commit suicide, your kids have a higher chance of committing suicide. And I just remember being like, can you please leave? Like, if you were to die right now and harm yourself, like, they wouldn't even know because you were not a good mother.
رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Today we have a
very, very special guest
on the podcast here today. It's a really exciting episode, but I will, get right into it and introduce Heba to you all. Heba is a maternal and child health nurse, and she supports families with warmth, empathy, and a really holistic approach, especially during that crucial but often overlooked time after the first few weeks of becoming a mother. What makes Heba's voice so powerful isn't just her professional background, although that's really awesome as well. It's her lived experience. She's a mum to 2 little ones, and she's walked through the really tough, messy, and real parts of postnatal depression herself. That journey gives her a unique and deeply compassionate perspective on what parents, especially mothers, go through in those early and vulnerable moments. Today, Heba is here to speak openly and honestly about that experience and how it shaped her, and why this work means just so much to her. We would like to acknowledge the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on where we are located today. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and to all First Nations people present with us today. We would also like to acknowledge the ongoing genocide and war going on in Palestine, as well as other oppressed countries such as Sudan and Congo.
Thank you for joining us today, Heba. And just to start us off, for those listening, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
So just like Hannah said, so professionally I am a midwife and a maternal child health nurse. But outside of that, I'm a really fun person. I've got 2 little toddlers who keep me super busy. I'm also a creative, although I have had to put that on hold, and we'll talk more about that today.
Absolutely.
And in addition to that, I thrive on social interaction. So anyone who knows me knows I'm a yapper. And so anytime I'm feeling a bit like low in energy or just need to re-energize, I just need to hit up some friends and catch up for coffee, have a long chat and just re-energize. And the only reason I'm touching on this is because my identity did shift throughout this experience, and I'm going to talk more about that socializing aspect and how it affected me. But it is such a big part of my personality. So we'll talk more about it.
Absolutely. And I feel like even like just meeting you for the first time today, in real life anyway, and like your energy and your vibe, like you definitely feel a sense of that like vibrance and that extroverted, social person. So alhamdulillah, like I definitely relate to kind of that personality you've just described to us. I guess, of course, this is your first time speaking publicly about your journey. How are you feeling about sharing your story today?
I'm honestly feeling super vulnerable. I have shared parts of my journey with like family, with friends, and some people watched me like throughout that experience. But just having to, having that opportunity to sit with you today and just talk about it so honestly and openly and just have it as a story, as my own experience, and just saying it verbally, there's something about it. I was really anxious last night and I was like, am I doing the right thing? And I checked in with Mohammed, my husband, and he really empowered me and encouraged me to have this conversation because it was a really real part of our life. And sometimes I'm not sure like how I overcame it. It was such a really difficult thing. And I really like most days I'm like, how am I even on the other side of it? But at the same time, I'm really honored and I feel really humbled to be able to have a voice to share my story, because I know a lot of people will resonate with my story.
Absolutely. It takes so much courage to be here, and we thank you so much, and your family and your husband for being part of this journey and being vulnerable with us. And inshallah, I'll help our viewers and our listeners if they are struggling with something like this, or they know someone that is struggling with something like this. And I just want to touch briefly on postpartum depression. And these things are often stigmatized in communities, but we forget that there are underlying neurobiologic underpinnings to these things. And if you have a look at a person's brain as they lead up to childbirth, before and after, there's a lot of hormonal changes. And after childbirth especially, there is a massive dip in two hormones, progesterone and estrogen. And these two hormones are incredibly important in modulating neurotransmitter activity in the brain. So the chemical signaling of the brain, you may have heard of dopamine and serotonin. They impact those. And so when you get such a dip and you get such a change in the way that these signaling molecules work with each other, what happens is you can become so much more susceptible to things like depression. And what makes you susceptible to depression is, of course, a multitude of factors. And of course, science is not the only thing behind it, or let's say neuroscience is not the only thing behind it. You know, there's psychology involved, there's your genetic predisposition and whatnot. And of course, there's a multitude of factors that play into this, but ultimately, someone can become much more susceptible to this state of being than another person. And that's why not everyone experiences postpartum depression. But again, it's really important to realize that there are scientific underpinnings. And if we are to scan the brain or do various scans, we'll actually find key differences that are affecting how a person's being.
Yeah. I think there's also really good statistics on postpartum depression that have been established. So about 1 in 7 women, so this is 15%, experience postnatal depression after giving birth, which is actually quite a large number of women who do. And also, interestingly enough, there are also 1 in 10 men, so 10%, who experience postnatal depression. And this is, of course, often overlooked as well because they go through their own hormonal changes that also leave them a little bit more susceptible to depression as well. So considering all of this, this is a major kind of concern and a major thing that happens that I feel like is also wrapped up in a very difficult situation where you're presented with what is typically seen as a blessing, and then you have kind of these emotions and these biological changes that are happening that are kind of taking away or pulling away from it just being a really, really good thing, which of course, alhamdulillah, it is. Of course, now we'll be talking about this today, but maybe for the audience, I know that you have mentioned that you have 2 children. What was motherhood like for you the first time round?
So the first time was really exciting. It was the first grandchild on my family side, and we're a family of girls, and I was having a girl as well. We were really, really excited about having an addition, and she was also, we already knew her name. She was named after my mother-in-law, Siham, and so we were really excited. So we knew who she was before she was there, and the whole time we were referring to Siham, and we were ready for her, and it was really exciting. First time parents. And when she was here, it was amazing. Like, I just had her, and 4 hours later I was home and I was waiting for my family to come and just sharing that joy with me, because she really did bring so much joy. And it was such a beautiful time. And I did really experience, when we say like it's a blessing from Allah, I really, really did feel that. I did have a really difficult pregnancy with her, but that didn't take away. It didn't take away from when I met her and when I looked at her, and I did feel that instant love that, people talk about. I was in awe of like what I'd done. I felt so empowered. I was on like a high after I'd had her. I didn't sleep 3 days after she was born.
SubhanAllah.
And my mum stayed with me, and she's like, go to your room, go have a nap. And I just couldn't believe she was here, and she
like
was
a real
energy. Life. Yeah, the energy was just so, I was high on adrenaline, and I just couldn't sleep. But when I finally did sleep, I was knocked out for a really long time. Sure. But yeah, just having her there, just like from like an idea in my uterus to she's out in the world with us now, and just like having her, watch her grow and become her own little person. It was really, really exciting, and I really did experience it like as a blessing. Yeah. It was such a beautiful experience.
SubhanAllah, that's amazing. And then how soon after Siham was born did you have your second child?
Yeah, so I was 5 months postpartum. So I was still navigating motherhood like for the first time, and all of a sudden I found out I'm pregnant. And it wasn't well received by myself or my husband. And, you know, there's a kind of a shame that you feel and a guilt because you know that there are people who are struggling to conceive, you know, there are people who've been, you know, waiting so long to have a baby and it came so easily to us, and you feel like you're not being grateful. And you feel, you know, you see, and, you know, we're a very social media orientated world, and you see a lot of families when they get a positive pregnancy test, they're elated, they are excited, they're having parties, you know, but when we found that, my husband and I were in tears. Like it was not well received at all, and we weren't ready to share that with anyone. And so we had to sit with it for a while, just process that. But there was a lot of guilt.
What led to those emotions? Like, how come the first time you were very excited to have a child, and then the next time you felt like you weren't ready? Or?
Yeah, I think leading up to when I found out I was pregnant, Siham's sleep was really challenging us. So we were really sleep deprived. We were having a difficult time adjusting. And usually around the 4th month, from my experience as, you know, midwife, like I know that there's a development like spurt at the 4-month mark. So we were kind of going through that. We hadn't slept in weeks, and we were starting to like be challenged by some of the newborn behaviors. Sure. And so when we found that we were pregnant, we were not ready in any way. I don't think emotionally we were there. Physically, my body hadn't recovered. And just, we were just not in the right space, like mind space for that.
Of course,
It's a whole new person. Yeah.
And if I may ask, what was the conversation like when you did or tell your husband or share with him that you were pregnant? Like, what was that moment like?
Yeah, I think when I think back, we both feel really guilty about it, because when I came in to tell him, I was already crying and he was like, no, no, are you sure? Like, there's no way. And we kind of like, we knew because I was starting to feel some of the symptoms before I received the like positive test. And, but it was really confronting because we did, like I said, we felt so much guilt that we weren't acknowledging that this is from Allah. And that kind of goes to the back of your mind because you're like, this is a problem for me right now. Like the first thing you think about is not, oh, Allah gave me a blessing. You know, you're going to be like, oh my God, like how am I financially, like emotionally, physically going to care for a new baby? How am I going to create a space for them and give them the same love as my first baby? So it puts you in a really funny, like vulnerable space. Yeah.
Even on a larger scale, when you told the rest of your family as well, what was their reception like?
They were really kind and they were really graceful, and it wasn't, the 2 under 2 gig wasn't unfamiliar to my mum. So she was like, you know, they're going to be best friends. But at the time, nothing was resonating with me. I'm like, oh my God, you know, like I couldn't see that because I was also struggling with Siham at that time. And I'm like, I can't see that far ahead, that they're going to be best friends. You know, it's going to be wonderful to have 2 babies because it was like having twins. You know, she was young. The gap's 14 months. So you can imagine she was still very dependent on me.
Are they like Irish twins?
Almost?
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Almost.
Yeah.
But they're just over. The Irish twins are like 11 months apart.
Okay, fair enough.
But kinda may as well
I
be.
feel like emotionally perhaps.
But my family was ready. They're like, oh my God, like they were super excited because Siham was such a delight. So we were ready. You know, they were like, this will be really fun and exciting.
It's interesting that you say that your mum has already kind of done the 2 under 2 kind of shtick. I'm wondering, can you describe a little bit more about your own family dynamics and your own childhood with growing up with what seems to be siblings, lots of siblings?
Yeah, so that was something that I had to also, like when I started having my own postpartum depression, it started to unravel for me when I looked back at growing up. So we're 7 girls. My mum was 19 when she had her first baby and she was a stay-at-home mum. So our dynamic was already very different. Like I'm a working woman and my mum was a stay-at-home mum. So she knew her role and her whole time was devoted around 7 kids. Whereas for me, I think there was a lot more dynamics to my life when I became a mother. But yeah, my mum, when she saw me going through my own postpartum experience, she's like, oh, is that what I was going through? Because it was not easy. It was not easy for her either. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely touch on that a little bit later, especially
Yeah.
like about the intergenerationalness of it all. I guess we brought it up a little bit earlier when we were speaking, but we were talking about how, you know, a lot of times it's not until our parents see us struggle with things that they perhaps struggled with but weren't able to find the words for, that they also are able to recognize some of those things. And I found that's such a interesting reflection on your part.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the lead up to you giving birth, it was a very difficult and challenging time. Can you run us through the first moments of when you saw your child and what was that like?
So with Nadine, I had a home birth, which is what I wanted, and I advocated for that. So she was literally born in my living room, and it was really exciting. You know, I had everyone there. I'm like I said, you know, I'm a super social person. I thrive off like having other people around me. I need that. And so my mum was there. A couple of my sisters were there. I let Siham be there when her sister was born. So we brought her into the room, and Mohammed was by my side the whole time. And then I had my 2 midwives. So it was pretty jam packed, and that was my idea of like, you know, an amazing. You know, that's the village. That was, you know, when we talk about the village, I guess when I thought about my birth, that's exactly what I wanted. And I was a bit annoying because I had like a boundary list and like what people were allowed to do, and you know, but I had everyone there, so it was basically a party, and it was really exciting. And you know, I had a really like, when I think about, you know, the what a birth is meant to be like, I think mine was pretty straightforward. I was also really high on adrenaline post this birth because it was such a wonderful experience. Like I had it in my living room, then I got up, dried myself off, and jumped in bed and breastfed her. Like it was such a casual thing. It just felt like another day. But now I have 2 babies, and it was really special. And then I felt, you know, I also felt really like a newborn baby too. And my mum was there, like tucking me in bed, and it was, you know, so there was like, it was really special. And I think the 6 weeks after that were really exciting. You know, I had my friends come over. I was ready for visitors straight away, which I know many people are not really comfortable with that, and I respect that.
Yeah.
But for me, that was something that was important to me, and I needed that energy. And so, you know, I welcomed people into my home. I was ready to let people meet Nadine, and that was really good for 6 weeks. But then I literally, and the way I describe it is, I was literally, imagine sitting in a lit room and then someone just flicked off the lights out of nowhere. And so that's how it felt. And I just felt like, okay, I'm barely like staying afloat now. And so, and you know, with postpartum, it manifests differently in everyone.
Of course.
And just in general, like you think about what kind of person you are and how do you deal with anxiety and how do you deal, and I'm really bad. My coping strategies are a bit wild in the sense that I keep telling myself that things are okay and they're going to get better. But then when they don't, I'm a bit baffled and I'm a bit shocked by that, and I'm like, why is this happening? So really, like, things really snowball quite quickly, and so that's kind of what happened with Nadine. It's
interesting that you describe the experience as like turning the light switch off, because it means it was all of a sudden, right? So there was no kind of lead up to any of the low mood. You weren't noticing any signs and symptoms, anything like that?
I think in hindsight, I see the signs.
Okay.
But at the time, because I was just trying to survive, and I'm like, oh, this is normal, you know, and people will tell you that when you're a mother, when you become a mother, everyone wants to give their opinion. And, you know, and it's people who are the furthest away from you in a relationship that will have so much to say, and they don't know you, they don't know your family dynamic, they don't understand anything. And so that was a bit, you know, like, oh, you know, just enjoy these moments, they're going to pass, you know, like don't let them pass, soak it in, that kind of thing. But at that point, like, I was starting to struggle to the point where I'm like, I just need to fast forward, like I just need it to be over. But like looking back, I was not sleeping. And when I told people I was sleep deprived, I hadn't slept in weeks. Like I had not closed my eyes, not a wink. And then, you know, before I came today, I was Googling, I'm like, sleep deprivation is a torture tool. So clearly it was used for a reason. And so that was me. And I guess my second one, her temperament was really different to my first. You know, my first would feed, sleep, poop, repeat. You know, with my second, it was just crying all the time. And her cry became my trigger. And so every time she cried, I disassociated from her. And that was like, I was seeing these things like when I started recovering, that's when I look back and I'm like, you know, oh no, like my sleep deprivation was really bad. Like I needed to talk about it. But I also isolated myself. I had a big support, but I did that to myself. I see it now, but it's that idea of being a burden on people. And it's hard to kind of turn that off and just not feel like a burden.
That's really interesting, and you know, like sounds like such a tough time, but it also sounds like a time where you didn't necessarily have the perspective that perhaps you do now. Like it was all very kind of you were focusing on what was supposed to be a caring, nurturing relationship with your child, and then I guess not necessarily reflecting on the things that were happening at that time.
Just with Nadine, every time I look back, I just remember her as a crying baby, just like screaming. And she's got a really husky voice till now. She's got like this raspiness. It's really cute now. She sounds like a little dinosaur, but she had that from when she was born. So anytime we were in the car, she would cry. And I just never knew what she wanted. And so my instinct was just to breastfeed her over and over, which later on because I got admitted to the mother baby unit, which we can talk about a bit later, I had to unlearn that because I conditioned her to want to be on my chest all the time, which I felt touched out. And that was another thing. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to be spoken to. I didn't want to hear any noise. So her cry instantly just made me feel like I just felt myself just retract, like from like in a spiritual sense, you know, like physically I was there like a piece of furniture, but inside like I was not physically present. Like you'd talk to me and I'd just look at you and I have no clue what you're saying. And
this was after the first like 6 weeks.
Because before I got help, there was a month and a half between. So that's when I was kind of, Muhammad realised, something's real. And he was the one who got help for me because I guess that was something that we had spoken about before and we recognised normal behaviour in each other, and when something wasn't right, you know, we knew when to ask for help. So because we're both health professionals as well, so we both kind of knew that something wasn't right. And I think Muhammad's trigger, there was one day, and I will not forget because even I was baffled by my reaction. I ran to my room and I screamed into the pillow, just like continuous. And then Muhammad panicked. And I do feel tears coming on, but it's okay. I screamed and I just didn't want to be around my kids. I did not want to be there. And Muhammad called my sister. He's like, you need to come right now. I don't know what's wrong with Heba. And that became an ongoing thing where I would just explode. So I'd run out of the room and just scream. And, you know, my kids were really young and maybe they won't remember me doing that. But when I think about my early parenthood journey, I just feel so much guilt and sadness because I don't feel it's so romanticized on social media. And I feel like I didn't get that with my kids. And I grieve that. I really do grieve that. And sometimes I'm like, maybe we should have a third so we can do it right this time. But then I'm like, maybe we should just get a cat instead just to be real and rational. But, you know, there was that was the thing that Muhammad was like, oh, my God, like what the hell was that? And just like continuous screams. And I will remember and I felt like I could go on. Like it was just one continuous scream. And then he called my sister and she's like, how long had this been going on for? And the thing is, my family was there for me and my friends were there for me, but I started isolating myself and I still remember till now, and they will call me and I'll ignore the call and I still remember and I'll text, I'll be like, I'm breastfeeding right now, I'm putting Nadine to sleep. But I did that so often, like, and I just kept doing it and it got really easy and I'm like, I'll just make up a lie that I'm busy or not home. But I was at home. I was not leaving, you know. And, you know, everyone's busy in their own lives. And when I first had her, it was the school holidays, so people were free. But now everyone's kind of returned back to work, you know, and it's fine. And my parents are half an hour away, which I know sounds like not very far, but when you're a new mother, that feels like a really long distance. And, you know, I've got 2 toddlers, putting them in the car and going to my parents, you know, like that was a really hard thing. And I did it for a little bit, but then it got really hard for me. And Nadine would cry in the car. And I would have to stop on the freeway. And I'm like, nah, this is not sustainable. And her cry was a trigger for me. So I'm like, no, I can't do this. And so I just stopped doing everything. Yeah.
So what did your husband do after that situation? So did he just call your sister, or what other avenues for help did you seek?
Yeah. So at the time, he called my sister first, and then she realized, oh, like this is more than regular, you know, like difficulties that I'm experiencing. And so then my husband brought my parents as well, kind of like an intervention. And like I said before, I felt like a newborn baby. Like I wanted to be held and I wanted to be like nurtured, because I just felt so lost. I felt really lost and just like I needed someone to physically hold me and tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I needed someone to just tell me, you know, like I wasn't believing. People like would say things are going to be okay and, you know, it gets easier, but things were not getting easier. And I stopped, like, it became more about like surviving each second than it became more about like surviving each day.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't, like, I actually had to look for reasons to still be around. And even though my kids and my husband were right there and my parents and my amazing friends and everyone was there, but I was still looking for a reason. But my parents were struggling, and, you know, you talked about, you know, like unless it's a cast on your broken arm or, you know, like a physical injury. I think my parents struggled with that.
Coming to terms
with
that. Wasn't as tangible.
Yeah, it wasn't as tangible. And, you know, I remember my dad saying to me, and he's like, you know, like, Heba, like, we're getting really old. I really need you to be strong. And then I felt like, okay, Heba, like, you really need to, you know, you need to just suck this up and just keep going. Yeah. Because you are like a carer for your kids, but then also your parents are relying on you too. And just like that pressure. And, you know, I am one of the most reliable in my family. And I say very lightheartedly. Yeah. But, you know, like, I know that my parents do rely on me. And so I felt a bit of that pressure to kind of just pull myself together. And they asked me, you know, like, how long has this been going on? And I think at that point it had been a month. And then it kept going. I wasn't cooking. Mohammed was like eating takeaway every day, and his mum was cooking for him. But at this point, I was still censoring what was really happening at home. Like, I think unless you lived with me, you would have no clue, like, at how difficult, like, how much I was struggling and how difficult my lifestyle at that point was actually like.
And how much you were masking it all too. It sounds like you're talking about isolating and not talking about not receiving your calls and not like the personality you described at the start. You weren't able to act in that way and be yourself in the way you wanted to, which is such a big sign, I think, that someone's struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the time you don't see it, you know, it's all in hindsight now. It's like, oh my god, like I should have done that differently. And, you know, and my older sister, Kausar, she's really sweet, because anytime I'm going through hardship, she'll say, you know, like, Heba, like, how would you talk to your friend? And at this time, I remember I said to her, this is one of the times where I would not know, like, what to say. If my friend was going through this, like, I wouldn't know how to support them through this, because that's a very hard thing. But anytime someone would try to comfort me or tell me that this is going to pass, I ignored. I actually did, and I think people would see that I'd go blank because it wasn't resonating, and so I disassociated, and that became my coping. Just like, nah, I don't care. Like, I don't. What you're saying to me right now, it does not sit with me. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't believe you. Like, really, like that. I don't believe you, and I would say that. Like, you would try to comfort me, and I'd say, I don't believe you. Like, I was so in my head. Yeah.
You know, something that really strikes me from your story, and thank you for, you know, being vulnerable and sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of people relate, is the fact that, you know, in some ways you're a nurse, you have a supportive husband, you have a supportive family, a large family to rely on, you've had a good first birth or a positive experience in your first birth, and you had a great, you know, alhamdulillah, birth experience with Nadine as well. I mean, it's kind of like, it shows that mental health does not discriminate between people. It's not as if because you have a good life, you're going to escape some of those things, right? And I think that's really quite evident in your story.
Yeah, and I think that was really confronting for me, because I'm like, I know this stuff. Like, I support families through this. I know what to say to them.
Yeah.
I know who to tell them to go to for help. But now that it's me, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
Like, why am I struggling so much to be like a carer for these two young kids who one of them I made an active choice to have, and then the other one surprised me. But, you know, I was still willing to show up for her. But why was I struggling so much?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because later on when I was at the mother baby unit, so the mother baby unit there's only 5 or 4 of them in the state.
Wow,
And it's a
okay.
6-bed facility. It's in Werribee. And so you
So
get
like 30 beds in total?
No, 6
beds
6
across
so
5
6 mums,
hospitals.
6 mums. So the one I was at was 6 mums, and you get to be with your baby under the age of 1. And so I was there, and I think there was a bed shut at the time, so there was actually 5 mums and 5 babies. But in that demographic, 2 of us were midwives. One of us was a nurse, one was a social worker, and one was a pharmacist. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was really interesting. We were all from health professionals, and I'm like, are we all seeking help because we are in the profession and we're in the health industry and we know that we need
Know
help?
about it, yeah.
Or why are we more vulnerable? It's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Are we just more confident in talking about our experience? Like, what is it? There's something different. But we were all health professionals, and that baffled me.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that unit and what that was like?
Yep. So I got referred there by my own maternal child health nurse, who I'm still in touch with, and it's very nice. But she was the one who referred me there, and she's like, I think you would really benefit from this service. And at the time I was really reluctant. And I remember I went back home and I'm like, oh my God, like I need to talk to my husband about this. Like, I'm not sure that I could be away from the family, because if you were there, you were going to be there for a minimum of 2 weeks. And then, you know, that meant I was going to be away from Siham, I was going to be away from my husband, and just like external support, like my family. But clearly for me in that situation, like I took that on and I said to her, I'll have a conversation, you know, with my family and see how they feel about it. And they were a bit alarmed, but I think at this point as well, I don't know that I had discussed just how bad like my mental health was, or I don't know that they knew that, because like I said before, I think you really needed to be in my space to see the way I just deteriorated so quickly. But at the mother baby unit, I really struggled with my bond with Nadine, and that's what this unit kind of encourages you to become independent again. So in your baby's care, and they run groups throughout the day, so you kind of can't run away. So I wasn't allowed to shut the curtains and hide in my room. And we actually, sometimes I felt like I was a naughty student, like at school, you know, like come out of your room, open your curtains today. And I would genuinely get really angry. Like I didn't want to open my curtains, but you had to. And you'd have to come out to the main area, have breakfast, and every morning we would sit in a circle and we'd all, you had to share a goal and what you wanted to achieve for that day. And, you know, at the start, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I shared it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't even want to be here. Like, I really, truly don't want to be here. I know why I'm here, but like, I'm having a really hard time being okay with that. Yeah. And so what our goals looked like, it could be like, I'm going to have a shower today. You're going to watch my baby to our nurse, like, and I'm going to have a shower, or I'm going to open my curtains, or I'm going to go for a walk outside. So there was like a little garden outside. So we'd have you can kind of walk in a circle, and it was a bit, So it pushed you out of your comfort zone. Yeah. Because at home I was hiding from all that. I was literally laying on the couch and doing nothing. You know, I stopped caring for my kids, and my husband had to step in, and, you know, like, but here Nadine was in my face. Her cot was right next to my bed. I had to actively, like every time she cried, I had to get up, soothe her. Anytime she wanted to feed, like I had to feed her. And just, and I say that like it's not an expectation of me like feeding her, but that was so hard for me.
Yeah.
Like I did not want her on my body, and my reaction to her every time I breastfed her, I was sweating and I was really hot, and then she got agitated and she would get sweaty and she would start crying. So it was just like this really like difficult relationship.
Pull,
yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, like I know I have to feed you, but I don't want to hold you and I don't want you on my body. Like I don't want that. But at the mother baby, you kind of like, it was nice because the nurses there were really lovely, and especially overnight they would take Nadine, give her a bottle if I didn't feel like feeding, and so that way I could get rest,
get some sleep finally.
Get some sleep. And I was also medicated, so I started on medication before I got admitted. But the problem, unfortunately for me, was that the first medication that I was prescribed didn't work for me, so it wasn't helping me, and I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks, and usually you should have felt something, and the first week is really hard because kind of your suicidal thoughts get like really become really loud, and that was like I had to be ready for that, and then I had to wean off my old medication at the mother baby unit. And so you see a team of like psychiatrists, you see psychologists, you attend these groups, and you just spend time with other mums. And to be honest, towards the end, I was there for 5 weeks, which is one of the longer like times for people. Like I saw people come in and out and I was still there. And I really I would cry every time someone left because it wasn't me. But I also had to like accept that I wasn't there yet. And they weren't going to heal me. That was not the point of this. It was just to encourage me to be a bit more independent again, and just give me that confidence in like my mothering skills, and give me that support. Like it was there at hand. Like if I needed to talk to a therapist or like a psychiatrist or whatever, they were there. Yeah. So that's kind of what it looked like. But I know not everyone is okay with that, because then the logistics of my everyday life was Siham had to stay with my parents while Mohammed went to work, and then I couldn't see her every day because I was all the way in Werribee and my parents lived like in the north, and it was just really hard to kind of navigate that part of it as well. So I was like, am I going to get as much benefit, or is it just going to cause me more pain?
Okay. But ultimately it was a good experience.
But ultimately it was a really good experience. I mean, with some care providers, you're like, oh, I don't really connect with you. And that was the case sometimes, but most of the times. And I'll never forget my nurse, Karen, ironically, but she was the best Karen I've ever met in my life. And whenever I achieved something there, like she would cry with me.
Wow.
And, like she saw me at my worst, and she understood me, and I did connect with her the most while I was in there. And even on the day that I was leaving, it kind of, when people get married and they're throwing rice at the back of the car, it kind of gave me that image in my head, because she stood behind the car as we drove off to go home. And
shout out Karen.
Yeah, shout out to Karen. And she was a really big part of that journey for me. And she really was so kind and patient, because just to reconnect with Nadine took a while. Yeah.
You mentioned the disconnect you felt with Nadine that led you to seek further help from the mother-baby unit. What was it like at home? What was the disconnect like? What emotions were running through your mind? And how did you feel like it affected Nadine as well?
So I think this part of my like parenting is definitely one of the most difficult things that I ever like had to feel. And, I look back and I'm like, damn it, like you only get to do this once, and I felt like I didn't do it right. So with Nadine's crying, and I know I talk about that a lot, that was a really big trigger for me. And when I say, I'm not, like, oh, that was triggering, I move on, like carry on about my daily life.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was like, oh my God, like get away from me. And I do like, I don't have the right words to describe it other than maybe I felt like I stopped loving her.
Wow.
That's really hard to...
It's a really hard thing to say, because you feel, that pressure, like you're meant to love your child. You're meant to do everything you can for them. And I think it just got so hard that I would just, Mohammed will go for work. So he works like 8 to 4 or whatever, like regular business hours. And he would leave. And as soon as he'd leave, I'd have a crying session because I was like, I'm going to be alone. And I was too afraid to call out to my support and say, hey, I'm struggling with the kids, because I felt like that was my role. Like I needed to know how to do this. Like this was my reality now. Like I have 2 kids. I need to know how to move on with this because this is my life. But also that feeling like a burden and just like, I don't want to burden people with me because I did like I said before, I felt like a newborn baby. And how am I going to care for these kids? Anyway, but my day looked like, so Mohammed would go to work and I literally would just lay on the couch. The curtains hadn't been opened. Like I want to say, so in that whole month and a half before I got help, you know, I don't think, I remember a time where I opened my curtains and, you know, like you might be thinking, oh, like didn't Mohammed like question that? Of course he did. But I just always had a reason for everything. I'm like, oh, the kids, you know, like it's too much light. Like she's a newborn baby, doesn't need the light. But I knew, like even at this point, Nadine's starting to know the difference between day and night. But I just had an excuse for everything to get out of like accepting where I was at mentally.
And others finding out.
And others finding out that I was incompetent, like that I'm not a good mum. And, you know, so I'd lay on the couch and the kids would just do whatever they wanted. Nadine was on me. She would be on my chest the whole day and I'd have her. So I had a bassinet that I just wheeled right next to the couch. And Siham she was moving. She was walking baby. Like she'd mess around, like, but I was still breastfeeding them both. So that was another thing that contributed to my depression because I really wanted to tandem feed. And so I did that for a while, but I had to accept that that was contributing to my mental health. So I was so touched out. Like that's another thing that parents will, maybe you've heard parents talk about, but what being touched out. So just you literally don't have a minute to yourself without having someone's hands on you. I had 2 hands on me, like 2 sets of little hands on me. And, you know, I was breastfeeding both. So I felt really like, I don't know the word, but
like exhausted.
I felt so depleted. Like I felt so exhausted, so touched out. Like, don't touch me. I don't want to be touched right now. And it just felt like so non-consensual. And I know that my kids and I was feeding them and that was a choice. You know, I wanted to breastfeed them and stuff. But Siham would just go along and play and then she'll come and she'll like nuzzle, you know, and she'll have her feed and then she'll go back to whatever she was doing. But Nadine should just be in the car. I'll transfer her, put her on my breast, put her back. And Mohammed will come home. They're still in their dirty nappies. The house is a mess. I've not prepared dinner. And, you know, like on a normal day, of course I love to cook for my husband. Of course I love to clean the house. I want to sit in a clean space too. But I couldn't get up. Like I couldn't even like talk to myself and say, hey, Heba, like, you know, even you need to nourish yourself today. Like you stink, you know, like have a shower. Like I couldn't. And just like knowing that I had 2 little kids sitting there, like I couldn't even jump in the shower. And even when you finally did, and even when Mohammed was home and he was with the kids, I'd hear them crying in the shower and they weren't actually, but I was that like disturbed by my experience that, you know, I just heard it all the time and it's just like, you know, the overstimulation was so much. But yeah, and then I just kept telling myself I'm not good at this and I don't deserve to be their mum and I'm not caring for them. And then obviously those thoughts just continued and continued. And it was quite confronting because, you know, it obviously affected my relationship with my faith. And I wasn't sure why this was happening to me. Like, why is this me? Like, why can't I be a good mom? Like, why can't I love them? And, you know, like I wasn't sure. There were so many whys and like I didn't have answers for anything. And so, yeah, I think, you know, I just disassociated and I just got really in my head and I convinced myself. And when I tell you I convinced, like I remember having these conversations like, Heba, they actually do not need you. Like if you were to die right now and harm yourself, like they wouldn't even know because you were not a good mother. Like they wouldn't even realize. And it was really confronting, like having that conversation with myself because then I started thinking about how am I going to do this? How am I going to hurt myself? And I knew exactly how. And I wrote a letter to my husband, and I never showed him. I actually revisited it after we had our chat the other day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a dumb letter. It didn't, like, I don't think it did enough justice. And I don't think, you know, I'm really grateful that I'm still here because,
Alhamdulillah.
Of course, alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah, because I do believe that it was not me. That was not Heba. I was not well at all.
Yeah.
And I had this one experience and I just remembered it. So before I got admitted to the mother baby unit, I got in touch with a CAT team. So they're an emergency. So if you feel like really suicidal,
Yeah.
they send them to your place.
Yeah.
And so I had this team come to my house, and I already felt
And was
like
it because you had called them or someone else had
so
called
someone
them?
had called them because I had been referred, and they coincidentally came on a day where I was really vulnerable, and she was like to me, "Oh, Heba, like if you commit suicide, your kids have a higher chance of committing suicide." And I just remember being like, "Can you please leave? Like,
Thanks for the stat, bro. Like,
thanks for the stat. Thank you so very much. This is so helpful." And I
Yeah.
just remember wanting to open the door for her and to ask her to leave because that was not helpful,
Yeah.
and that's not what I needed to hear. And it just kind of pushed me even further.
that's the dumbest thing I think anyone could have
Yeah,
said. That
yeah. And I still like the fact that I still talk about it. So now clearly it didn't resonate, and I thought it was like, how are you a health professional?
Yeah.
You know, like that's not something you would say to a parent who is in like the pits of their depression, you know, considering whether life is, you know, adequate.
Yeah.
You know, like
And also struggling in some way with motherhood, you know, like
yeah. And I'm like, are you working with other vulnerable
yeah.
moms? So there was a lot of, and you know, it was hard for me because I'm a carer. I'm usually like a healthcare professional and I provide support and stuff. So having to receive that support, like it was
that,
a bit,
yeah.
it made me also feel a bit like, oh my God, like Heba, you really need help because you're on the other side of things.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't really, that made me feel even worse about myself and like, oh, like I'm really not good at this. And you know, like these conversations that I would have with myself, they were so real. Like I really did believe everything. Like I truly believed that I was the worst mother in the world. I truly, like you could not say anything to me and make me think that, yeah, I was a good mom. Like, and I knew like they were thriving, they were moving about, they were fine, but I was not fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't love where I was in my life at the time. And I felt like everyone talks about, you know, this maternal sacrifice. But why does it come at the expense of losing my entire self? That's not sacrifice. That's a word that I don't even know. You know, like I couldn't recognize at all. Like I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. And I stopped driving for like that month and a half after the 6 weeks. And even after I came home from my recovery, because I knew that that's how I would hurt myself. But I would never do it with the kids in the car. It was so vivid. Like I would picture it, you know, exactly like how I would do it. And I truly believed that I would if I was alone. Yeah, so the car for me was a trigger. And like part of it was that Nadine cried in the car. But also I felt like it was the easiest way for me. Like I was like, oh, it's accessible. You know, it just worked out in so many ways. And you think about this stuff when you're really suicidal. You think about everything. You think about how am I going to do it? What mess am I going to leave behind? Who's going to find me? Who do I want to find me? Like, and these are really like, I know these are so confronting, but this was my real life. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like I don't want to be around the kids when it happens. And I like, even like in my letter, like I wrote, you know, like I want Siham and Nadine to be with my parents, even though Muhammad's like, he's the best dad in the whole world. But I even thought about the pain he'll feel when he looks at them. So I thought that he might heal better if they were with somebody else.
You thought about it all the parts.
I thought about it all. And it's so confronting because, you know, you kind of think about like, were people not good enough for me to want to stay? But it goes beyond that. It's way, like, it's a feeling that, and a thought that I couldn't even comprehend, you know, that vulnerability, that state that I was in. Like, now when I, like, reflect back on it, I'm like, damn, like, who was that? Like, I don't know how I got so sad, and it was beyond my control, and to the point where I thought Allah couldn't save me. But I believed in his mercy. Like, I knew he would forgive me because he knew, like, what I felt inside. I really did believe, like, that he wouldn't even be upset with me. And, you know, like, of course I'm going to think about that. Like, my life centers around Islam. My life centers around my faith. And this is how I wanted to, you know, raise my kids. This is the path that I want to take. And so, of course, I'm going to think about what's Allah going to think of me. But towards the end, I'm like, I believe that Allah is merciful and he knows why.
Yeah.
I can't go on.
Like, it switched, even that. Yeah.
Depression really depletes us of all of our ability to reason and think through things. It's a very isolated experience. But I wanted to ask you, did anyone think in your family or the community think maybe jinn or something like that? I feel like that would have been.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, people think about, like, evil eye and jinn, and it was definitely a conversation that came up. And I believe in a holistic approach. You know, I was very open to receiving westernized medicine, and, you know, like, I went to the mother baby unit. So I was really open, you know, in my recovery and the support that I received. So, of course, you know, like, my parents they were concerned that it was beyond, you know, our realm, you know, and I do get it. And it's a real thing that does happen. But I knew from myself and just, like, my health background that this is depression. Yeah. So yeah, we did touch on it. And I did, like, entertain my parents with that thought process. And it was a very big learning curve for my parents. And I think they were really patient and kind. And then they started seeing how vulnerable I was, and they're like, oh, like,
wow.
I think I realized what she's going through. And even, like, it was really annoying because at the mother baby, you know, I constantly had to give context every time I want to explain a cultural aspect of my life. And that was really exhausting because I'm so depressed. Like, I don't even want to talk.
Yeah. And then you're asking me why I pray five times a day or whatever it might be.
Or, like, why my dad doesn't get depression, or, you know, like, why my Arab dad, who was not even born here, doesn't get depression. And so I really, that exhausted me as well. But then we ended up having a family meeting at the mother baby unit, and they invited my parents. And so the psychiatrist, she just said to my parents, the whole, you know, physical, broken arm, medicine will get better. So they kind of explained it in that way. And that was really helpful to my parents. But it was, to tell you, it was a huge learning curve. And even, like, you know, as much as they like to see me as a grown woman who has 2 kids and stuff, I'm still their baby.
Of course, yeah.
You know, so imagine seeing your child in that pain. And, you know, I think about that now, like, if my daughters, like, went through this experience, I don't think I could imagine a pain greater. Like, that would be so, like, you would feel so helpless, you know, just seeing someone suffering.
Of course, yeah.
How did that affect their mental health as well, like your parents and your husband?
Yeah, my husband, he stayed strong throughout it. But when I started recovering, I saw him crash.
Yeah.
And, you know, he is the toughest cookie I know. And I think, you know, he did really well. And I think he thugged it out for a long time. But, yeah, when I got better, he kind of is like, nah, like, I'm done. I'm tired. Like, I've carried this weight. You're getting better. I can finally have my turn. And obviously it wasn't as dramatic as mine. But he just needed some time to rest and rejuvenate, and it needed some time off work and things like that. And that was another thing, you know, like, constantly having to call in sick because your wife's, like, in the hospital. He was driving up and down between seeing me and his daughter, and, you know, like, it was so chaotic. It just, the logistics of our whole life was just, like, turned upside down. But he, like, and then we recovered, and he was, like, such an essential part to my recovery. And then my parents as well, like, it was a big learning journey, but they were also really super supportive. And I guess they realized that you can't raise kids alone. And so when we talk about a village, this is what we're talking about. I'm with my kids, you know, all the time. I love them. I love them so much. I would do anything for them. But, you know, their grandparents can have them for a day and I can do my own thing. And they recognize that what help that could, like how much helpful it could be to me.
Yeah.
And it's not about, I'm not running away from my kids, you know, like.
That's just, it's normal. Like,
Yeah.
You need time to rejuvenate, be yourself, have your own sense of
Absolutely.
identity, and come back with like more energy for them.
Yeah,
you know,
even
at the end of the day.
when you think about like back home, and I say back home about like our countries of origin,
Syrian?
yeah. So
originally
Syrian background,
yeah.
even
Or like just
just
whatever
in
culture
general,
we're
like
from. Yeah.
ethnic families, you know, their kids are running loose in the village, and they're just having the time of their lives. And
Very
then
true.
you'd invite your neighbors' kids in for
your
lunch or dinner, your
cousins,
cousins, you know,
uncles, yeah.
you're with each other all the time. But we don't have that here.
No.
Everyone is living such an individualized life, and it's just the way, it's the context of our living. And it's such a hard thing because motherhood does not like it doesn't thrive in that kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I think a
context.
part of why we feel the way we feel and why we're struggling so much is a part of the fact that we're taking away from the natural way that we were meant to be raised. You know,
Yeah.
as a part of a community, we're feeling that loss. And I think ever more presently, as the world becomes more capitalist and more like, you know, centered around individuals and ourselves
Yeah.
and, you know, like the nuclear family without, you know, all of our beautiful extra bits and adds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and that's become a normal, like my daughter Siham just spent 2 days at her grandparents' house. They were in Malaysia for 12 days and she had to make up for it. So, you know, like now it's like,
That's
it's
so
such a
cute.
normal thing for
Yeah.
us. And I get my time, you know, even just one-on-one with Nadine, and then
Yeah.
I get my one-on-one with Siham, and it's so beautiful and so effortless, and they're comfortable being everywhere and away from me. And, you know, it's become our norm. So like now,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah, like it's come a really long way. But definitely at the time as well, you know, my in-laws really wanted to be part of my recovery journey, but I found that really hard because I was really vulnerable. And so I felt,
And the guilt, of course.
and the guilt, and then I also just felt more comfortable being vulnerable with my parents. And so even when I was at the hospital, I didn't allow, other than my family and Muhammad, I didn't allow anyone else. And my friends wanted to come see me, but I was really like, I was unrecognizable, and I didn't want to be seen like that. Like, I didn't want you to see me in that state. It wasn't me, and I needed help. Like, you know, see me when I'm better, you know, kind of thing. There's just something about feeling so exposed, like today. No, I'm kidding. But, you know, like there's something about just being vulnerable in front of people. Like, you just feel so exposed. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah, even harder when you don't have the answers.
Yeah.
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 I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm really wondering what your journey with faith was like throughout your experience, you know, as a mother the second time round. Was it something that you eventually were able to lean back on at the end, or, you know, what was it like for you?
So, initially, even like anyone who's experienced depression or anxiety, I think the first thing that is easy to stop doing is praying. It's too physically demanding when you're depressed, you know? So that was kind of easy. And then like I was like, okay, I'm not praying. I was just like, I'll make dua, like while I'm laying down, even, you know, just like, Allah, please, like heal me, like help me overcome this hardship. And, you know, like, I just thought dua was the next best thing, and I would even play Quran to soothe Nadine, but that girl was unsoothable. But it was a really hard like thing, and then I slowly stopped doing kind of entirely everything, and then, you know, to the point where I'm just like, Allah, just forgive me for where I'm at, because I don't think I can continue. Like I didn't have the strength. Like I couldn't physically get up to pray. And, you know, I can say Alhamdulillah or whatever, but even that I was not convinced. Like, what was I going to say Alhamdulillah for? Like my depression, you know, like it was such a hard thing to accept and understand. But it definitely did. I didn't question why, like I didn't say, sometimes I know there's cycles of like, why is Allah doing this to me? I don't remember like going into that, but I'm just like, why am I feeling this? Like, what is this meant to teach me? Because, you know, we kind of, as Muslims, you're just like, everything's meant to be a lesson and there's something good on the other side. I'm just like, what could be so big on the other side of this that I have to experience depression? Like, I was just trying to understand everything.
Get to the answer.
Get to the answer. And, you know, when people tell you just trust Allah's wisdom, I'm like, what is Allah's wisdom with this? I don't know. Like, and I can't trust it because I just can't understand it. Like, I just couldn't understand it. So I kind of, my relationship with Allah, like, and just like faith and praying there kind of got a bit disconnected because I'm like, I actually don't know anything and I'm not getting answers. And I just feel like I have to live through this. And then, you know, in my recovery slowly, like I started like things, alhamdulillah, like became a lot more easier and I was able to reconnect and, you know, start praying again. But it took me a really long time, like just to regain that energy to be able to physically get up and, you know, pray. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Our faith often gets tested the hardest with uncertainty. So it's one of the hardest tests, genuinely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, as a nurse and now a child and maternal health nurse, I'm assuming that you may have been aware of PMD or postnatal depression before experiencing it yourself. But I guess I'm wondering about your perspective at that time and whether you were really able to label that for yourself when you were experiencing it.
I do look back and I think there was a lot of denial. I was like, nah, I'm fine. I've got this. Like, this is so fine. This is like the normal postpartum blues, you know, like everyone goes through this. It's just a dip. I'm going to be okay. So there was a lot of in denial. Like, I'm very aware of that. And I remember like, why did I have to try quiet down like all these thoughts that I was having? Clearly something was not right there. Like there were so many red flags, but I think I just wanted to be okay. I wanted to thrive in my motherhood, which is I guess a lot of people want to, like, and I felt like I wanted to challenge these like thoughts that mums are, you know, self-sacrificial and, you know, like everyone will thrive in motherhood. And so I just wanted to be part of that. Like, I didn't want to just survive, but it was quite literally like I had my head just above the water. And, you know, then it got to a point where I didn't have my head above the water anymore. And I do in hindsight, like, it is very obvious. Like, I definitely had postpartum depression. And it was really interesting because I didn't actually have a formal diagnosis until I got admitted to the mother baby unit. They knew, like, it was very obvious. Like, I had all the symptoms. I had a really high, so there's a quiz that they do. And I had a really, really high score. And if you answer yes to the suicidal ideation, then automatically you need to be referred to a support service, whether that's like regular mental health unit or the mother baby unit. So I knew that, like, there were so many alarm bells, but it wasn't until my first meeting with a psychiatrist. She's like, yeah, like, you have severe postpartum depression. And just hearing that, I think you do feel a bit of relief because you're like, okay, I'm not losing my mind. Like, I'm not going crazy. And what I'm feeling I was definitely trying to conceal what I was feeling, and it wasn't normal. I definitely was sick and just, you know, like really, you know, even saying that about myself, like I was unwell, I was sick, you know, and just, you know, so yeah, when she said that, when I did get a formal diagnosis, I was like, okay, I did have depression. I did have postpartum depression.
Did it feel validating towards you at that point, or was it kind of something that you had already internalized perhaps?
I was disappointed because I really wanted to be okay, but it was definitely validating because, you know, sometimes it's just exhausting trying to explain to people, like,
Absolutely.
I'm depressed, you know, but why?
Yeah.
You know, like, what's happening?
You're a
like,
new mom.
You're a new mom. Like, this is normal. Like, it's going to get better. Like, just hold on. Your kids are only little for a short period of time. Like, things like that. And I'm just like, no, like, I want to be over this point. Like, I don't love the newborn phase. And I want to be past that. And, you know, like, alhamdulillah, like right now, like, I'm very confident to tell you, you know, I'm having such a brilliant time, like amazing time with my kids, alhamdulillah. And I love it. And, you know, do I want to hold time? Everyone doesn't want time to pass, but there's so much that comes with the future and it's really exciting. And I wasn't seeing that before. Like, it was more a survival thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But now it's more like, no, there's more to enjoy. So I look forward to that. And it's definitely a different lens.
And what was your journey to self-forgiveness like as well?
That's been a really hard one. Because till now, you know, like I'm telling you that I still, you know, have that guilt. And I do like so many times I'm like, oh, do I need to do this again so that I'm able to do it right? Because I didn't feel that. And I do, like, even now, like, I'll look at Nadine and I'll remember what her newborn phase was like. And I'm like, I did that so wrong. And it's like I still have those self-blame, like, ideas in my head. And I'm not sure that they can, like, be taken away or anyone can replace them with positive thoughts. And, you know, something that I heard at the Mother Baby, you know, like constantly they would tell me, Heba, like, this is just a short period of time. It's like a grain of sand in, like, your entire, like, life. And for me, it was just so big, like, it was so heavy. So I'm not sure that I forgive myself even today, like, and I hope that one day I am able to. But when I look at Nadine right now and she's thriving and, you know, I enjoy her company, and I really do believe, like, she makes my life so wonderful and so exciting. I hope that I'm able to forgive myself, and I hope that she doesn't remember, even though I'm talking about it. And, you know, I talk about, you know, that struggle to have loved her in that early, like, period of her life. I really do just pray that I'm able to forgive myself. Yeah. Because I can't do it again. Like, I can't rewind time and do it differently. Like, what happened was written for me. And, you know, like, I made choices of, you know, even delaying, like, that, receiving that care or whatever. Those were ultimately my choices to conceal. And I just wish that I was more honest at the time. Maybe so people knew what I was going through, so that I could have enjoyed my early motherhood a bit more. Yeah.
But I think even the question itself, the idea of self-forgiveness, I sort of asked it in a cliche manner, but the question is not accurate, because forgiving yourself implies that you did something wrong, but reality is you didn't. This is a very natural part of you know, your experience, and we explained as well some of the underlying neurobiology. And at times, you know, this is just the test that you're kind of going through, and so we look at these things and we feel so much self-blame, but how much of the self was really there, right? And so now, with all the resources that you have and the experiences that you have, having hindsight, yeah, of course, hindsight's 2020. I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently. But you now is not the same person you were back then, and everyone has to understand that. And, you know, I'm sure Nadine will as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like you said, He's most merciful. He's capable of everything. And I'm sure Nadine, as you can see now, she's perfectly fine. She's perfectly happy. So really, the only person that's still thinking about it is probably you.
Is me. Yeah.
I'm also wondering, I mean, do you think that if there were more open conversations about postnatal depression within our community, especially specifically, and also I think larger society, do you think it would have changed some of the outcomes or some of your journey there?
I think, you know, I feel really fortunate, because even though, you know, it took me a bit longer to be honest about my experience, to receive that help, I do even now, because I'm in that space as a maternal child health nurse. Even when, you know, the resources are presented to us, it's a really westernized, you know, resources that we receive. You know, it's a lot of Caucasian women who are talking about their experience with postpartum depression, but you don't really see people who look like you talking about that experience so openly. And it's hard because, you know, I told you that I had to explain so much context in my recovery, and I felt like I had to educate people, like, why I'm feeling this. And, you know, I just wish there was someone out there who just understood, like, some of these contexts, so that I didn't have to elaborate on it and just say, I'm depressed, you know, like, people think, you know, the evil eye, you know, and they just get what I'm talking about, you know, without me having to say anything extra. So I did find it really hard, because I didn't see resources out there that I could resonate with, or, you know, anything that I could identify with, and nobody wanted to talk about it. And, you know, and when you presented me with this opportunity, I did see it like, okay, I'm in this space and I don't mind sharing my experience, because it's so important. And I did share briefly, like, on my social media about my experience, because I also have my art side hustle thing that I was doing it for a period of time. And so I shared some images from my time at the Mother Baby unit, and I had so many mums reach out to me and, you know, just thanking me for being honest and open. But I didn't want praise. Like, I just wanted to say, like, this is a real life thing that happens to us, like Muslim women, like Muslim colored women, and we just don't have the right resources available to us. I'm not sure that, I'm in a space where I could, like, I don't know that there are resources I could point these women to. Like, I don't think we have them, but just having this conversation here today, like, I'm really hoping that maybe more people, would come out and talk about it and just, resonate with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why we value your vulnerability and why we see such a benefit.
One of many reasons.
Yeah, one of many reasons why we see such a benefit for you being on this podcast and speaking about it, because you're right. Like, I think it means something different when your struggles are experienced by your own community and seen by your own community. And I think that understanding is really hard to not have sometimes, especially in the places that you were. I guess I'm wondering what would have been helpful to you during those moments. Like, is there something that someone could have said or done to help you a little bit more during that period?
I do look back, and honestly, the only thing I could think of, I feel like I just wish that I was more honest, because I feel like I became this deceptive person trying to be okay, I'm like, I'm fine. And, I do think back and I'm like, that was me. I feel like I just wanted to be okay, that I convinced everyone around me that I was okay. Like, I would say, oh, it's hard, but it's okay, alhamdulillah, just really minimalizing from my experience. And I do, like, I just think that I wish I had been more honest, but I know that that's not an option for everyone, not everyone has the same support, and not everyone is able to finally reach out, like, in the same way that I did. But I feel like when I think back, I just wish someone helped me, not even words. Like, just, I felt like I was falling apart. And I think I just wanted someone to hold me together again, a bit like Humpty Dumpty, like, I just wanted to be whole again. And I don't think that there's any words that anyone could have said to me. I think I just needed a presence. Yeah, more than anything.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just children to our parents, right? But at the end of the day, even though you were coming into a motherhood, you were also still a child at heart in some way, and wanted that love and nurturing that you felt as though you needed to give to others at that point.
Yeah. It's a really hard thing. I don't know. I think I need a pause because I'm not sure.
Yeah. And you don't have to say anything to that. We can...
Yeah, take your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's okay.
You can try reword it for me, because sometimes my brain just lags.
No, I think we might move... We'll just move on to another question. I was going to ask...
I wanted to actually ask something.
No, please.
Are we running out of time?
No.
I was thinking, okay.
Don't cry over me.
No, I was thinking, like, I wanted to ask, maybe this can even be off the thing, but, like, you're saying, like, let me wait.
No, it's not. He's talking so informally.
No, I'm thinking, like, when someone is going through this, and you said you were struggling to be honest, like, my first reaction is, if I knew someone that was going through any kind of situation, mental health struggle, my first instinct is to be as invasive as possible. Like, it's so hard for me. Like, when I can tell the other person is like, I know that the blinds are not up because you're not feeling well, not because your child is X, Y, Z. My first instinct is to open the blinds, get you some food, X, Y, Z, and just, like, be around. And then the other person will be like, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here. And I'll keep going with that. And I'm not really sure if that's the most helpful thing. I don't know. Obviously, like, in that situation, do you wish someone was like that? Is that sometimes not helpful? And, like, sometimes people just, like, communicate and ask the person, but in, like, a situation like yours, if you're not really fully engaging in that communication, do you just, like, force the help? Like,
and, like, that's a really, really important and valid question, because I think that is the support I was receiving. But then you feel like something's really wrong when you're like, no, I'm still not good, even with that help. And the reality of everyone's life is that they had their own lives too. So even like with my family, because they were around me the most, they had work. They had to move on with their everyday. They can't stop their life to be at home with me and my kids. And, you know, we are like our own individuals and we're leading different lives. And I did like, I'm telling you, I was such a deceptive and I had reasons for everything. And I think people genuinely didn't know the weight of what I was experiencing and I concealed it so well. So all my energy went into being like, I'm good, you know, like I'm so fine.
Putting
like
up that mask.
And I really like it, and that was my whole facade. Like that was my whole experience, was me just pretending. And that's why I crashed because then I was like, this is so exhausting. But you know, like what you described, that was the help that I had. And then usually people's first instinct to ask you when you say that you're depressed, like especially in the postpartum, they're like, do you have a good support? Like, yeah, I had a great support network, but I was struggling internally. You know, it's not about, you can have everything in the world around you, but there's just something about that internal conflict and just, you know, wanting to be okay.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because when I was at the mother baby unit, the one thing that resonated with me, the psychiatrist said to me, like, Heba, you can have everything in the world. Like, we can give you all the drugs, we can keep you in here like for the rest of your life, but if you don't help yourself, that nothing's going to happen. And I don't know why, but that's what stuck with me. And I'm like, I am my own responsibility and I need to be accountable as well, like in my own care and my own journey to caring for myself and healing. Like I really needed to acknowledge that I was the biggest part of that. And just like, you know, we talk about forgiveness and I needed to learn those things and just really recognize that I wasn't well.
No, absolutely. Do you feel like you would have been accepting of that advice if it was someone like from your family or your friends, or was it much more palatable from a psychiatrist?
I think it wasn't the fact that she was a psychiatrist. I think I was sick of hearing people telling me it's going to get better. But if I asked when or what did that look like, you know, you couldn't give me an answer, but she was just honest with me.
She was just straight with
and
you.
I think I loved that. Like, and in general, I think I generally in my lifetime, like as a person who I am, I love when people are honest with me. Don't beat around the bush, you know, don't tell me it's roses and butterflies and rainbows. Just tell me you need to work hard. And, you know, like everything else is helpful, but you also need to work with us. It's a teamwork, you know, it's not just us doing the work or you doing the work, it's all of us. Sort
of empowering you again to work through.
I really loved her honesty, I think it was her honesty. Yeah.
I mean, we often talk about the growth that we experience after a really traumatic or difficult situation, finding, you know, strength or purpose from something that might be really painful. Do you feel that in some ways your journey through postnatal depression transformed you in a way that maybe you can, talk to us about now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it stripped away everything that I knew. And I had to learn to accept that. So I think a big part of my like recovery journey was accepting where I'm at. Yep, I'm a mum. I have 2 kids. Who am I now? And just like learning to rediscover that and being okay to rediscover that, because I'm not the same 20-year-old like when I didn't have kids, when I was living at home with my parents. Like my life has changed a lot, so I had to accept that transformation and, you know, be like, who am I now? And accept it, but then also move forward with that. And like till now it's a work in progress. And I think, you know, in general, like everything takes time and it takes a lot of learning and experience. And, you know, I think I'm still really, I consider myself really fresh out of that experience. And I'm 2 years postpartum now, and I've only recently started to feel like myself again.
Wow.
But I did feel like everything was taken away from me, you know, like I felt like I had no time to myself. I had no privacy. I had no time for social interactions, no time to care for my body, like, you know, like whether it's hygiene or like going to the gym, going for a walk. And just like even my relationship with like my family, my husband, my friends, you know, just trying to work on that and making time for other people. But also that's rejuvenating to me. So I only recently started to feel like, oh, like I'm feeling good again. And I'm feeling like I've learned who Nadine is as a person and her temperament can be challenging, but I think she's such a vibrant, like she's such a ball of goodness, you know. She runs around in her little dinosaur outfit, and I can't think of anything more that defines like her as a person. She just like, she does these little roars that, you know, and just like at the time I didn't like look at her in this way, but now I'm just like, oh, like I see you and I hear who you are as a person, and I've worked really hard to accept you for this person, and I'm gonna have hard days. And I've accepted that is part of life in general. Like even when you're not a parent, like you're going to have days that really test you and you're just like, oh, like I just have no energy or anything, you know, to deal with today. But you make it through. And I kind of look back at my journey and I'm like, how did I make it through? But then if I keep thinking about how I did it, I think that'll make me go a bit more insane. So I just have to let it go. And, you know, it was what it was. But it got me to where I am today. And now, you know, I'm back in that space as a maternal child health nurse. And I've, you know, been lucky enough to support so many women. And I feel really lucky because I feel like families feel safe with me in that consult room. And I'm really aware because I've been there and I relate to them. And I think there's something about connecting with parents who are in the same like stage as you in life that allows them to share some of their vulnerability. And, you know, like, I have had a scenario where I had a mum come in and she's like, I'm not ready to share because I've only just met you. I'm like, that's okay. You know, like take your time. We've only just met. You don't have to tell me everything about yourself right now. And by the end of the consult, like it was really nice because then she just blurted out like what she wanted to share with me. And I'm like, okay, like, for me, that moment, I'm just like, okay, you know, my experience really shaped me to be like a safe space for other families.
So powerful, yeah.
So I feel really, really lucky. And I did that, like I went back to uni in the midst of,
I was going to say, it was a purposeful decision.
It was a purposeful decision, and I'm really grateful that I did that because I think I'm definitely in the right career.
I can definitely see that for sure. I'm also aware and I'm cognizant of the fact that there may be some people listening to this who are going through similar things to what you have described, right? They might be feeling really low, feeling like they're just keeping their head above water, both men and women alike, who might be experiencing symptoms and signs of postnatal depression. What's something or a message that you would give to them as we close off this episode that you feel like you want to share?
For me, I think something I would love to tell people is that things will be okay. I can't promise you when, but there's definitely a light, even if it's a little speckle, something you can't even imagine or find right now, it's coming your way. And you really do have to take care of yourself and don't go, like, you don't even have to search too hard to find that speck of hope because it's sitting right, like you have control over it and you can reach out and people are willing to listen, and your experience is not, you're not the only person who has been through this experience. There's so many people who resonate with what you're feeling. And you are not a bad parent. Like, you are the most perfect parent you could be for that baby. And Allah chose them to be in your care because He knows that there's no one greater for them than you as their parent. And that was something that took me a long time to understand. But I do believe Allah is so, like, me and my sister say this word, wisdomous, because it's just one of our languages. We say, you know, Allah's wisdom is that, you know, He knows what He does. He does everything with purpose. And so when He chose Nadine for myself, even though in that moment I didn't feel like I was a good mum for her, I look at us now and I think, wow, like we're such a great team and I'm so lucky to have met her as my daughter in this lifetime. And I hope that, you know, it continues. And I just think the same for other parents who might be feeling the same. And Allah did this with a purpose and He chose them for us.
I don't know. We're going to have to interview Nadine to see how she feels about the team dynamic, but for now, we'll have to take your word for it.
Jazakallah khair, Heba, for sharing. I feel like that advice has touched me, and I hope that it will for the people listening as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to protect you and your family and whoever might be listening to this or watching this with their own journey and with their own difficulties. I hope that what you've shared will bring some strength and some make other people feel as though they can be vulnerable with the safe places and safe people in their life, inshallah. And we are so we feel so honored to have you on the podcast and share this story with us today. So jazakallah khair again.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. I do feel like it's a very, very special guest.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. And thank you to the amazing people behind the scenes that make this episode a reality. Inshallah, see you next time.
Thank you for being with us today. If anything in this episode felt heavy, please don't sit with it alone. If you're supporting someone during the perinatal period, you can also contact Panda at 1300 726 306 for free counselling and support. Alternatively, you can book an appointment with Helping Hands through our website at 6degrees.org.au. Take care of yourself, and inshallah, we'll see you next time.